another episode of Codo Cinema, the podcast show where I talk about movies. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. For this episode, I'm going to talk about another live-action Disney remake, and funny enough, this is the second live-action remake for the 2025 year, and I'm very positive that this is the last live-action Disney remake from 2025. And I'm pretty sure many of you guessed it right. And of course, from the title of this episode, I'm going to talk about the live action remake of Walt Disney's Lilo and Stitch. So I guess the Walt Disney Company is not done with live action remakes of their beloved animated classics, right? After the Poison Apple Bomb, which is basically Rachel Zegler's Snow White, right? To be fair though, Lilo and Stitch is actually one of the more better live action Disney remakes. At least from the 2020s, to be quite honest. So anyway, the live action Lilo and Stitch movie is a 2025 American science fiction comedy film directed by Dean Fleischer Camp and written by Chris Kikanino Kalani Bright and Mike Van Waz, produced by Walt Disney Pictures and Rideback. The film is a live action remake of the original 2002 film Lilo and Stitch, which was traditionally animated, with some elements that are also based on the film's animated sequel films and TV shows. It stars Maya Kealoha in her film debut as Lilo Pelikai. I'm pretty sure that's how we say her last name, but everybody knows her as simply as Lilo, right? With original Lilo and Stitch writer and director Chris Sanders reprising his role as the voice of Stitch. It also stars Sydney Elizabeth Agudong, Billy Magnuson, Hannah Waddingham, Courtney B. Vance, and Zach Galifianakis. With original cast members Tia Carrere, Amy Hill, and Jason Scott Lee appearing in different supporting roles. So this movie came out, oddly enough, in 2025. It actually came out around Memorial Day weekend in the United States, so which is May 23rd of 2025. And funny enough, another movie came out around that time, which was Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I don't know why both of these movies came out the same weekend. I mean, are they really trying to pull off that Barbenheimer phenomenon? I mean, I don't understand that. Let's be honest. You could have named this phenomenon. You could have named this phenomenon Mission Impossible Stitch Protocol. Boom. There we go. Title combination phenomenon right there. Or whatever phenomenon title you want to make up for Mission Impossible or the Lilo and Stitch movie that to which both came out around Memorial Day weekend. And yes, also to mention, this movie is still currently in theaters, so we will be going into major spoilers in this movie. So, spoiler alert to anyone who has not seen this movie. So anyway, as I mentioned, this movie was released around Memorial Day weekend, which was May 23rd of 2025. Plus, it also had a release date on May 17th of 2025 at the El Capitan Theater in Los Angeles. Unlike some of the more recent live-action Disney remakes, it got a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes. Also, CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A+ to F scale, while those surveyed by PostTrack gave it a 90% overall positive score, with 81% saying they would definitely recommend the film. However, Metacritic, which uses a weighted average score, assigned the film a score of 53 out of 100 based on 38 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. And of course, going to IMDb, it has a score of 7 out of 10. So it has a mixed to positive response. And in my opinion, and of course, one of the better live-action Disney remakes. Now, this film is not without its problems, to be quite honest with you, and we will discuss about the problems with this movie after I break down this movie. But overall, from my personal perspective, I thought it was a fun movie. This movie was a lot of fun to watch, despite the film's flaws. And of course, after the recent box office poisoned apple Snow White movie that came out, like I said, that's the one with Rachel Zegler, and that film is actually, and that Snow White movie, let's be honest, that one that one was just basically dead on arrival. If you want to hear me talk about that movie, you should definitely check out my review on the live action remake of Snow White, which is basically, let's be honest, a punchline because of the removal of the seven dwarves, which is basically, Snow Brown and the seven hobos. I said enough about that movie already, and like I said, you want to check out that episode, go right ahead once you're done listening to my Lilo and Stitch review, the live action one. But anyway, let's get right to it. I am going to talk about my background on Lilo and Stitch as a whole, but I am going to talk about my background on Lilo and Stitch as a whole. Plus, I will break down this movie, given my positives and negatives, while also giving you some trivia about the live action remake. Anyway, just to give you my background, I grew up watching Lilo and Stitch, and let's be honest, it's a film that I really, really enjoyed. Now, it's a lot different compared to the other Walt Disney animated feature films because this is, let's be quite honest. I mean, we're talking about a film that's which basically centers on the characters of Lilo and Stitch, but Stitch, on the other hand, is basically the fan favorite out of all the characters in this out of all the characters in this movie out of all the characters in the original movie. Like, you have, obviously enough, Lilo and Stitch. You also have Nani. You also have David. You also have Jumbo and Pleakley. You also have Captain Gantu, and so many other characters. But Stitch is basically the fan favorite out of the bunch. He is basically your fan favorite troublemaking experiment 626 who causes a lot of trouble. Plus, he is so cute and fluffy, right? Like, come on, he's an amazing character. Like, Stitch is a genetically engineered extraterrestrial life form, and he is the more prominent of the franchise's two title protagonists, which, of course, referring to his human adopter and best friend, Lilo. And Chris Sanders provides the voice of Stitch. I didn't know that Chris Sanders, who wrote and directed Lilo and Stitch, would provide the voice. I mean, that's literally amazing right there. Like I said, Stitch is basically the fan favorite out of all the characters in the world of Lilo and Stitch. He definitely throw out some really good one-liners. Plus his I'm so cute and fluffy! And then, of course, you got Me Ganana Krista! Plus, he also turns into a ball. He is best friends with Lilo. Plus, gets into rival confrontations with Captain Gantu as well. Particularly in the TV shows, because after the first film's success, Lilo and Stitch literally expanded. Like, there were at least a couple of movies that came out after the first one. Like, you got Stitch the movie, which was actually served as a pilot for the TV show. You got Lilo and Stitch 2, Stitch Has a Glitch. And then, of course, you got Lilo, Leroy, and Stitch, which I'm pretty sure that film serves as the epilogue for the TV show of the same name as well. But I have seen basically the show and of course the sequel films that follow. But let's be honest, the sequel films won't top the original in my personal opinion. Even though, yes, the one that centers on Stitch, which is basically Stitch the movie, served as the pilot for the Lilo and Stitch show. Now, as for the remake, I didn't think this movie would get a remake because, let's be honest, this movie, as of 2025, is 23 years old. The original movie came out in 2002, and it's basically 23 years old. So obviously, you know why Walt Disney Pictures decided to greenlight a live action remake. I mean, you know why they're doing that. They're basically going in for the money. But of course, let's be honest, seeing more Stitch, right? Lilo and Stitch, right? And that announcement came on October 3rd of 2018. It was going to be a live action computer generated animation hybrid film of the same name. It was going to be it was set to be adapted by Mike Van Was, produced by Dan Lin and Jonathan Eric, and co-produced by Ryan Halprin. And of course, on November of 2020, John M. Chu entered talks to direct the film. However, Chu would not. However, Chu left the film due to other obligations, and I think one of the reasons was because he was working on the Wicked movie that came out in 2024, which was actually a really good movie. So then they brought in another director, which was Dean Fleischer Camp, and he was chosen to direct instead. Now, of course, I was pretty split on the decision because I didn't know what to expect from a live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch. But unfortunately, there were a couple of teasers that came out. One of them featured Stitch crashing through the movie screen, and I'll be quite honest, the CGI the CGI design on Stitch looked really, really good and really promising, as if they were, and I quote, going for the Sonic the Hedgehog movie approach in a sort of, right? I say sort of because of the overall execution of the rest of the movie, if you know what I'm saying, right? So, as I mentioned, Chris Sanders was brought on board to voice Stitch, and of course, you also had a casting call, which includes Zach Galifianakis, who would he was reported at the time in February 2023 to voice Pleakley, but unfortunately, in April of 2023, the Hollywood Reporter wrote that Galifianakis had officially signed on to be voicing Jumba Jookiba. In late March, Maya Kealoha was cast in the lead role as Lila Pelikai. Now, I do apologize if I mispronounced any of the names. Like, some of these names, some of the casting names, I'm pretty new. Some of the names of the cast members are new, so I do apologize if I mispronounce any of the names. Okay, so later on, Billy Magnuson was cast as the voice of Pleakley, and then of course you got Sydney Agudong as Nani Pelikai, plus Courtney B. Vance was cast as Cobra Bubbles, and then you also have Tia Karari and Amy Hill playing supporting characters, and it turns out Tia Karari played the social worker, while Amy Hill, who played she played Miss Hazagawa in the first Lilo and Stitch movie. Although this time around, in case anybody wondering who Miss Hazagawa is, she's the little old lady with gray hair who wears glasses and is basically the owner of the town's fruit stand, who always waters the fruit stand, right? Like that's her. That's her. Although this time that's the character that Amy Hill played. Although this time around she's playing Lilo and Nani's next door neighbor, to which her grandson is basically David in that movie, at least. So there's some of the casting right there. So the movie was filmed in Hawaii. So the film was filmed in Hawaii, obviously because the original Lilo and Stitch took place in Hawaii as well. And then the visual effects are provided by Industrial Light and Magic. So basically, there's the background on this movie right there. Now, going into this movie, I actually had doubts about this movie. Now, the first part of me, I was looking forward to this movie, but after what I heard of what was going on in this movie prior to being released, I had doubts. And and I am going to, and the doubts of this movie is because of the changes that they made. Like, the whole ending was changed. Like the whole ending was changed, and of course replacing, and of course Captain Gantu, who was the film's antagonist in the original movie, was not in the live action remake, and filling in the villain role would be Jumbo Jukiba. Now, those are some of the doubts that I had, and I didn't know how I feel about it, but I wanted to go see this movie because why not? It's Lilo and Stitch. You know Stitch is going to be the fan favorite, right? But even before Lilo and Stitch, I went to see Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning first. So about 2 weeks ago, I went to see the new Mission Impossible movie. I enjoyed that movie a lot. I really enjoyed that movie, and to which I really enjoyed that movie. The stunts in that movie, awesome. So after seeing that movie, I wanted to see Lilo and Stitch, and I just didn't know how I feel about that. And of course, I didn't know how I feel about the Lilo and Stitch movie after the whole live action debacle of Snow White. But a lot of people, had hope. But a lot of people still had hope for this movie. And you know what? Why not? But anyway, let's get to the breakdown of this movie, shall we? So the movie opens up on the planet Toro, to which Dr. Jumbo Jukiba, played this time around by Zach Galifianakis, is convicted by the United Galactic Federation of illegal genetic experimentation for creating Experiment 626, otherwise known as Stitch, played once again by Chris Sanders. Experiment 626 is an aggressive and near indestructible creature with advanced learning capabilities. And of course, we get to meet the High Grand Councilwoman, voiced this time by Hannah Waddingham, and she's basically the judge of she's basically the judge of this, right? And of course, she talks to Jumba and looks at Stitch. Obviously enough, Stitch is basically the blue is basically, your typical blue koala, part koala, part dog, experiment who always goes crazy, being aggressive and near indestructible with advanced learning capabilities. And of course, the Grand Councilwoman asked Stitch, if you're really this smart, say something. So then, what's actually a little funny is that there was actually a microphone that came inside his glass capsule that he is in, and Stitch says his famous line, "Mika nala Krista." Everybody hears that, and then of course you get the Grand Councilwoman in complete shock, and there's even the robot. We see the robot from the first film throwing up bullets out of his mouth. And the Grand Councilwoman was like, "No, he did not." And then she sentenced Jumba, and then of course she convicts Jumba being guilty. She convicts Jumba, so Jumba is basically guilty and imprisoned, while 626 is sentenced to exile for his destructive behavior. And so, of course, to anybody who has seen the original, Stitch is basically hanged upside down with these monitored space blasters, just following his every move. And then you get this alien guard who's just basically, standing guard. And then, of course, Stitch is basically, drooling, and his drool hits the guard, to which the guns are basically, the blasters are facing the guy, which shoots down the door, right? So 626 escapes by stealing a police cruiser, and yes, he took the red one, and he uses it, goes into hyperdrive to reach planet Earth, crashing in the Hawaiian island of Kauai. So then, the Grand Councilwoman offers Jumba his freedom if he captures 626, pairing him with deputized Earth expert Agent Pleakley, played by Billy Magnuson. So anyway, both Jumbo and Pleakley go to Earth. And then 626 crashes near a near a wedding reception to which they're playing Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars, and is run over by a tourist trolley before being taken to an animal shelter. Now, that's how the movie opens. Now, of course, we transition to Lilo, and as I mentioned, Lilo is being played by Maya Aloha. Now, obviously enough, the opening for Lilo, like she's basically in the ocean. She's basically, bringing a sandwich. She places it in the bottom of the ocean. Well, not the very bottom of the ocean, but like on a rock. She places on a rock in the ocean where a bunch of fish, and I think one of them is Pudge, because Pudge, to anybody who knows who Pudge the fish is, Pudge is a fish that Lilo sees, and Pudge eats a peanut butter sandwich. And I believe the reason why Pudge eats peanut butter sandwich, and those are always on Thursdays, is because Lilo believes that Pudge controls the weather. I believe that's the thing that Lilo does, gives Pudge the peanut butter sandwich because Lilo thinks that Pudge controls the weather. That's something right there. That's something that Lilo always does, every Thursday with Pudge, right? So she's basically late to hula school because obviously she's feeding Pudge, but also in this movie she basically goes into different locations where she's not allowed to be around at, like she's basically in an adult hot tub, and then she's also in a she also goes through like the employee's office of some sort, and of course I'm pretty sure one of them is, and of course one of the restaurants, and I think it features Nani's job, I believe, of some sort. But anyway, Lilo's late to hula school, and then, but unfortunately, but at hula school, Lilo and all the other hula dancers are basically, doing a show, right? They're just basically doing a hula dance show, but unfortunately, Lilo's sister Nani is absent because of the fact that, one, she was coming from work, but also her truck was not starting up, right? And Lilo gets all upset, and then of course we see Myrtle, who is barely who is of course we see Myrtle. Myrtle's basically unrecognized in this movie, to be quite honest. But what Lilo does in frustration, Myrtle's basically like the bully, right, to Lilo, and of course, instead of Lilo punching and biting Myrtle, Lilo pushes Myrtle off stage. Okay, it's a little different, but still, she does take her frustrations off on Myrtle. But let's be honest, even in the original, Myrtle was more of a bully in the original than compare. Myrtle was a lot more of a bully in the original. I think she was just in this live action remake. She's just there, right? She's just there, even though, yeah, Lilo pushes her off stage. But anyway, Lilo, as I mentioned, gets expelled from the school, and then Nani, and then she goes home. She walks home alone, and Nani gets to the school, and like the original, she goes. She tries to find. She believes that Lilo's back home, right? And of course, yes, Lilo is back home. She's basically on the ground, laying back first on the ground, listening to Elvis Presley. Yes, we do get some songs from Elvis Presley in this movie, much like the original. We do get Elvis Presley songs, so I'm still glad they kept the Elvis Presley songs. So anyway, the social worker comes on by, although this time it's not Cobra Bubbles as the social worker. It's not Ving Rhames playing Cobra Bubbles. It's basically Miss Kikoa, who is being played this time by the same Nani voice who is being played by Tia Karari, who is as I mentioned the original voice actress for Nani, and of course, as you probably would know, that the social worker comes to visit and finds Nani unfit to care for Lilo, right? demanding that she complete her tasks in a week, which is basically, basically you gotta make sure the house is clean, you gotta make sure your bills are paid, and then of course I think she also mentions like the insurance, I believe, and then I'm pretty sure, obviously make sure Lilo is in good behavior, right? Although it still saddens me that although I still remember in the original when Nani accidentally, when Nani like almost gets run over by the car that Cobra Bubbles drives, right? Like she kicks the front of the car saying, "Hey, watch where you're going, stupid head!" Like it's the social. I can't believe it's the social worker's car where that I can't believe it's a car that Cobra Bubbles drives, and I still remember finding it funny when the social worker Cobra Bubbles comes up to Nani from behind, and Nani's like, "Oh hi, you must be the stupid head." I'm like seriously, it's just that it comes back to her in the original. Although we don't get that in the live action remake. That's something that was missing, right? It's the little bit of that, it's a little bit of those nostalgic moments, the nostalgic comedy right there, if you know what I'm saying, right? But of course, Nani, as once the social worker leaves, Nani looks at Lilo like she chases after her. Lilo licks her, goes to the room. They both have freak out moments, even to the point where Nani goes outside while taking out the trash and drinking a Capri Sun juice pouch. She sees her neighbor Tutu being played by Amy Hill, and of course they both have like their conversations about hey, taking care of Lilo, but also talking about college because it is revealed in this movie that Nani applied for college in San Diego, California. Like in this movie, she wants to be like a marine biologist, which is barely brought up. It's mentioned at least a couple times up until the end of the movie, right? During the nighttime, Lilo and Nani are having their conversation up until the point where Stitch's ship crash lands in Hawaii. Although Lilo mistakes it for a star, right? And of course makes a wish on it, wishing for a friend. And then, as I mentioned, I've already mentioned this already. Like Stitch crashes a wedding, which is actually pretty funny because he sees cake, right? He sees cake. What's also funny too is that Stitch was wearing this collar. He was wearing this tracking collar that Jumbo put on him, and Stitch deactivates the collar, right? Until this one, this one guy comes by and sees what all the fuss is about, and he just sees everything. He was like, "What the hell?" Like, oh my goodness. But then the whole wedding gets crashed by Stitch. He gets run over by the trolley. We even get to see the frog who meets Stitch for the first time. Although he doesn't have his blasters this time around. Like, yeah, Stitch does not have his blasters with him. So the frog sees the trolley running Stitch over, and then he gets taken to a pet store. So then Tutu takes Lilo to the animal shelter, just to check out all the animals, and 626 is there. So then Lilo checks out all the other all the other pets who are basically the dogs, right? She finds a wrecked cage, and comes to think of it, who's behind Lilo, that'll be Stitch himself, 626, who impersonates himself as a dog and allows Lilo to adopt him for his protection, right? To which Lilo does not know that Stitch is a wanted alien criminal from outer space, right? Or a wanted alien experiment, right? And also, while I'm at it too, Jumbo and Pleakley land on Earth, and of course they have to blend in. And this time around, they actually disguise themselves as actual human beings. And the way how they did it was they actually, both Jumbo and Pleakley took DNA, touched the actual humans of both Zach Galifianakis and Billy Magnuson I don't know if that was a coincidence, but man, that part was funny. And of course, Jumbo and Pleakley disguise themselves as actual human beings. Even before that, they do this gag where they actually, they're basically wearing trench coats and hats just to like cover themselves up. I thought that part was funny too, but once they go into their human forms, it looks good. This is one of the main things from the Lilo and Stitch live action remake that I like is that they disguise themselves as actual human beings, right? I thought that was a clever way to be creative, right? But anyway, yeah, Jumbo and Pleakley check in at a Hawaiian hotel, and then of course they decide to like hunt down Stitch, right? So then after Lilo adopts Stitch, Nani takes the two to her resort job, which is that outdoor restaurant with her friend David Kawena, and David this time is being played by Kaipo Dudiot, and of course, obviously, David sees Lilo and sees that Lilo has a pet, which is basically Stitch, right? And David was like, "You sure that's a dog?" And then Stitch is like, Stitch does the bark. He's like, "Rough," and Lilo is like, "Yeah." And then of course Lilo names, well, as I mentioned, names 626 Stitch after Nani comments on having to stitch a car seat he tore. They enjoy the resort, but Stitch accidentally causes a table fire, leading to Nani's dismissal by her manager, to which the manager is being played by Jason Scott Lee, who is the original voice actor for David in the original movie. So then later on, Nani is visited by Kikoa, the social worker, and Cobra Bubbles, a CIA agent who is investigating Stitch's arrival while posing as a social worker. So Kikoa demands that Nani find new employment immediately, and despite several interviews, she is rejected due to Lilo and Stitch's antics. Lilo helps Nani get hired as a surfing instructor, and they enjoy surfing after her first shift. Meanwhile, Jumbo and Pleakley unsuccessfully try to capture Stitch while jet skiing, causing Lilo and Nani and Stitch to fall in the water. Basically a wipeout. Nearly drowning Lilo when Stitch sinks. So after Lilo's recovery, Kikoa tells Nani the Hawaiian government can cover the health insurance costs if she relinquishes her guardianship, which she reluctantly agrees to. As the sisters share one last night together, Stitch reflects on his actions and solemnly returns to the animal shelter alone. Meanwhile, the Grand Council woman, frustrated with Jumbo's failure to capture Stitch, cancels their deal and orders Pleakley to return Jumbo to prison. However, Jumbo decides to do his search his way, so he ditches Pleakley and decides to capture Stitch. The social worker and Bubbles arrive the next morning to find that Lilo has escaped from her bedroom. The two, so of course, the social worker, Bubbles, and Nani start searching for Lilo until Lilo finds Stitch at the shelter, but Jumbo arrives to recapture Stitch. They escape back to the house, and the two fight Jumbo, destroying their house. Another thing to mention too is that when Jumbo gets knocked out by Lilo and she picks up Jumbo's gun, she holds the gun on her back while holding a Capri Sun juice pouch, drinking it freaking Rambo or John Matrix style. Like I don't know, man. She did it soldier style, right? It's like Lilo is saying, you don't want to mess with a little girl, huh? I think that's what she was going for, right? But unfortunately, during the fight, Jumbo reveals that Stitch used Lilo for his protection, leading to guilt-ridden Stitch's surrender. Jumbo takes Stitch aboard his spaceship using a portal-generating gun, intending to erase Stitch's newfound empathy. And as a result of that, Jumbo was attempting to turn 626 into 625. Unfortunately, Jumbo was going to attempt to turn Stitch into a different experiment. Like, we get experiment cameos in this movie, right? One of them that featured Angel from the TV show, But anyway, Jumbo takes Stitch aboard his spaceship using a portal-generating gun intending to erase Stitch's newfound empathy. However, Lilo sneaks aboard and frees Stitch, and they eject Jumbo from the ship. The ship crashes into the ocean, trapping Lilo and Stitch underwater. Stitch rescues her, but as he cannot swim to the surface, he releases her to let her emerge and drowns. Nani and David rescue Lilo, but she refuses to leave Stitch. David returns Lilo to shore while Nani swims back to get Stitch from the ocean floor. They reach shore, but Stitch remains motionless. After Bubbles finds Pleakley and they rejoin the group, David revives Stitch by jump-starting his lungs with Nani's truck. Shortly after, the Grand Councilwoman arrives and rearrests Jumba. After seeing Stitch's change of heart, she decides to let Stitch exile on Earth with his newfound ohana, which is a Hawaiian term meaning family. Ohana means family. Ohana means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. So then Nani, Lilo, Stitch, and company return home, and of course the social worker tells Nani she can give Lilo's guardianship to David and Tutu, allowing her to stay home. The Ohana then repairs the house and lives happily together. Nani, now attending the University of California in San Diego to study marine biology, uses Jumbo's portal gun to visit Lilo and Stitch back on Kauai. And that is basically it. That is basically the breakdown of this movie. Now to give in my positives and negatives. So let's start with the positives. One of my main positives of this movie is that it's fun. It's a fun movie to watch. I do appreciate that this movie is being fun, right? Like both Lilo and Stitch, they're basically fun characters, right? Obviously Stitch is the main reason why this movie is fun. I mean, Stitch is heavily marketed throughout this movie. Like, I mean, come on. You can't deny Stitch. Stitch is basically the main reason why this movie is around, right? And of course, I'm referring to the original, but so is the live-action remake. But even then, this movie was a lot of fun to watch. Like, the sense of fun is still there. Sure, not as great as what the original had, but this movie was still fun. Another positive I want to bring up, and I've already mentioned this, is basically when Jumbo and Pleakley disguise themselves as humans in this movie instead of dressing up. I mean, they kind of did that for the start with those trench coats until they found their actual human counterparts, which is actually funny because we see both live action Billy Magnuson and Zach Galifianakis before Jumbo and Pleakley turned into their human counterparts, right? That's something that I really liked. Now, of course, I do have a negative about Jumbo, but I will get to that pretty soon. But I thought Zach Galifianakis in the human form of Jumbo, I thought he was really good. The same can be said with Billy Magnuson as Pleakley in human form as well. Although, yet again, the comedy is a little off between the two, but I was still okay with it. And of course, moving forward, I thought Nani and Lilo, I thought they were fine in this movie. Both actresses played their roles very good. I really liked the casting for Lilo and Nani. I thought the two were really good. Although a bit of a nitpick is basically they did ditch out some of the emotional stuff from Lilo. Like they still show the troublemaking side of Lilo. Like Lilo does get into trouble a lot. Like she goes into places where she is not allowed to go. She does that with Stitch throughout the movie too. So they did a good job showing the trouble side of Lilo, but it did lack some of the emotional stuff where Lilo's kind of upset, right? Because to anybody's knowledge, both Lilo and Nani's parents died in a car crash, and that happened on a rainy night. Although both versions never show the actual accident, but yes, it is revealed that Lilo and Nani's parents died in a car accident on a rainy night. Unfortunately, the 2025 live action version leaves their backstory largely unspoken. So it kind of explains why Lilo is shown struggling to cope with the loss, believing that the weather of her which shows like Lilo, which explains why Lilo is shown struggling to cope with the loss, believing that the weather or her forgetting to feed Pudge the fish was somehow related to their deaths. So yeah, the emotional part from Lilo does drag, but there are a couple but there are moments where we see Lilo and Stitch together, right? Like when Lilo shows Stitch how to do the hula dance, I in her bedroom, I thought that was pretty cute. And then the kiss on the nose, I thought that was really cute too. I really liked how they both worked together to fight off Jumba both times. I thought that was pretty funny. I thought that was funny, especially when Jumba gets sucked out of the ship and lands into the frickin' ocean. Like, I mean, oh man, that was good. Also to mention too, I actually really liked how this movie was a little more practical in terms of like the location settings for Hawaii. Like this is basically on location, right? I really appreciate when movies film on location instead of like, recreating it with CGI. I really appreciate the on location scenes, right? Even though yes, Stitch is basically CGI, but the CGI on Stitch looks really good. And that's another thing too. I thought the CGI was okay for the movie, like especially in the opening for the Galactic Federation, right? Like sure the designs may be a little weird, but the CGI, I thought the CGI delivers pretty well. But when it comes to the on location scenes, the scenes when they're on location is really good. I really liked it. I do like how Stitch got his Elvis outfit at the end of the movie. I thought that was pretty cool. And then, I mean, the Elvis songs, I really liked how they kept some of the Elvis Presley songs for this movie because that was basically one of the main things. That's basically one of the main things that the original had, and I'm glad that they actually brought that back. And and the casting, I already mentioned about the casting. I already mentioned some of the casting, but I thought the actors that they had did a pretty good job of what they were given. Most notably the human characters, and I believe Pleakley and the Grand Councilwoman as well. But I will get to more of Jumba's side when I go to the negative portion of this movie. But anyway, that's pretty much it for the positives. Now, let's get to the bad side of things. So let's go. So basically, bad to the bone. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Bad to the bone. Alright. Let's get right to it, shall we? Like, now, going back to what I said at the beginning of this episode, I mentioned that I had doubts about this movie, especially of what they were especially some of the things that they decided to change, and some of it kind of threw me off. Like the first negative that I have for this movie, and this one's an obvious one. This one is basically the exclusion of Captain Gantu. Now, the exclusion of Captain Gantu really surprised me because in the trailers, I'm wondering when are we gonna see Captain Gantu? But unfortunately, before the film's release, I think it was a week before the film was released in theaters, when Captain Gantu was not going to be in this movie, I was surprised. And a part of me theorized that maybe Cobra Bubbles was Captain Gantu the whole time. Because if you really think about it, this movie was playing around with the idea of Jumbo and Pleakley disguising themselves as actual human beings. So maybe Captain Gantu was bumped into Cobra Bubbles and decided to, disguise himself as Cobra Bubbles. That way he'll be the one, pressuring Nani and Lilo to, to like give up Stitch, right? And the twist would be that Cobra Bubbles is Gantu the whole time, right? I thought that would have been a nice little twist, right? But nope, that's not what this movie did. Director Dean Fleischer Camp said that he tried the idea, but to me it kind of felt very vague. And I don't know the reason behind it. Maybe it was a budget issue or something. I don't know. Like you have the opening be, set in space where all the alien creatures are basically through motion captured CGI, right? You couldn't do that for Captain Gantu. And yeah, just to give you an example, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects with a budget of over $200 million, and it created Davy Jones' CGI. And that motion capture CGI on Davy Jones holds up so well, and that movie won an Oscar for Best Visuals. So they couldn't do something like that with $100 million budget for Captain Gantu. I don't understand that, but yeah, that's one of the main negatives of this movie. Now, there is a possibility that this movie might get a sequel, which is a possibility. And if it does, I hope Captain Gantu is in that movie. But we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Only time will tell. Aside from excluding Captain Gantu, my second complaint is that Jumba is the main villain in this movie. Jumba is basically the villain in this movie. So Jumba Jukiba in the original, like both versions, he's basically an evil genius, although he's never really a villain, right? He was in the original movie, he was more of an antagonist, right? But in this live action remake, he's basically the villain. Like he's basically tasked to hunt down Stitch, right? Like Jumba, he's basically a purple and pink skinned alien who speaks in a vaguely Russian accent. In the remake, he doesn't have the Russian accent. He's basically American in the live action movie, being voiced by Zach Galifianakis. Now look, I don't mind Zach Galifianakis, but I'm sorry to say this. Zach Galifianakis does not sound like Jumba at all. I'm sorry. I can't hear Jumba, alright? Like, I hear the voice, all I hear is Zach Galifianakis. Like, he couldn't even attempt to do a Russian accent or try to deepen his voice. Like, I don't know the reason behind it. It's like as if Disney told Zach Galifianakis, like, hey, don't do the Russian accent, don't deepen your voice, just do your regular voice and call it a day. I think that's what went down, but I don't know. It's like they didn't even let Zach Galifianakis try the Jumba voice, do the Russian accent, right? Like David Ogden Stiers, who voiced Jumba in the original, did a fantastic job. Like his voice was a lot deep. That was something that I was expecting to hear in the live action remake. And while I believe Zach Galifianakis did a fantastic job of with his acting and of course his live action counterparts, I thought he did real good with that. His Jumbo voice was not there. I'm sorry. No matter, I mean, look, all the actors did a fantastic job, but I'm sorry to say this. His voice acting role for Jumbo was not good. Even his villain role was not that great either. Like he was more of an antagonist in the original. He was more of an antagonist in the original. I mean, hell, he showed emotion towards the end of the movie, like when he realizes that Gantu captured Lilo. There was a bit of an emotional side from Jumba. He was like, oh man. But of course, knowing the fact that he was only tasked to capture Stitch, right? Even though he was still considered to be an evil genius, he was never referred to as a villain, right? And yes, there is a difference between being a villain and being an antagonist. Like both Jumba and Gantu were antagonists, not villains. So an antagonist is any character or force that opposes the protagonist, creating conflict and tension. So basically, Jumba and Gantu were the antagonists, creating conflict and tension between the main characters of Lilo and Stitch. And of course, a villain, on the other hand, is a type of antagonist who is typically characterized by evil or immoral intentions, often driven by ambition, greed, or a desire for power, which is something that Jumba and Gantu never really do in the original movie. Even though, yes, there are hints of villainy inside both characters, but they were never really villains. They were just antagonists. Like, the original never had villains. The original Lilo and Stitch movie never had any villains. They were just antagonists. That's it. But this live action remake wanted to bring in the villain side of this. They completely bastardized that with Jumba Jukiba. I can go on for hours talking about this, but that'll be taking up a lot of time. But yeah, Jumba being the villain in this movie, I did not like that. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people who probably seen this movie didn't like that either. But anyway, let's move forward. This next one is basically what got people's attention prior to the movie's release, aside from, Gantu being absent from this movie. But this next one got a lot of people's attention, including myself. But it's basically point number 3. Nani surrendered her guardianship of Lilo to the social worker. Okay, but this one turned off a lot of people. And this is basically at the end of the movie. So at the end of the movie, particularly the original, Nani and Lilo stayed together while David and the crew help rebuild the house, right? And they're basically, a family again, right? And in this whole movie, this whole original movie, like Nani sacrificed everything after the parents died in the car crash. Nani sacrificed everything to, take care of Lilo, right? Like, you see the struggles that she's going through to take care of Lilo, right? Like, Nani sacrificed everything. She spent less time with David. She sacrificed, her hobbies as a surfer, because in the original, if you notice something, she has trophies of being a competitive surfer, and then a bunch of other things too. Like, she works at a restaurant to make the money to pay the bills, right? And she does everything in her power to take care of Lilo, right? And at the end of the movie, at least in the original movie, she still holds on to her guardianship with Lilo, right? As a family. And remember, Ohana means family. Ohana means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. That's what happened. That's the whole point of the original movie. In this live action remake, Nani gives up her guardianship of Lilo. And who takes care of Lilo at the end of the movie? Well, her neighbor Tutu and David, while she goes off to be a marine biologist at San Diego. And while that may not now, to be quite honest though, yes, that is a change, even though at the end of the movie she visits Lilo back at home with Jumba's portal gun, and of course, the two of them, at the end of the movie, sleep together with Stitch, spending the weekend together back at home using the portal gun. And while, yes, I'm glad that Nani was able to come back home for the weekend with the portal gun, it still deteriorates what the original message and the original ending had from the original movie, right? So this is basically going to the point that Nani gives up her guardianship just to go to college, right? And to me, while I think that's nice that Nani goes to college, it defeats the purpose of her character when it comes to taking care of Lilo, right? And the whole college thing is brought up a couple of times throughout this movie, but it's just basically thrown in at the end just so Nani can go to college. It's like Nani failed her guardianship with Lilo and decides to, like, yeah, screw it, I'm gonna go to college, right? Something like that. But I mean, yes, I know she gives up her guardianship of Lilo and have the neighbor take care of Lilo, but to me that defeats the purpose of what Nani was in the original. Like I said, Nani gave up everything to take care of Lilo. She provided a house. She provided, she had to put food on the table for her. And yes, both sisters have, like, their own doubts about each other. They were still together. Even though they were broken, even though the family was broken, they were still together. They were still a family. This whole thing in the live action remake, out the window, thrown out the window and into the ocean. This is one of the main reasons why some people did not like this movie, because of how it changed the original film's ending, right? Like, I don't mind Nani going to college, But what if that was the thing that Nani sacrificed? Like, think about it. Nani going to college and realizing that, her and Lilo's parents died in a car crash. She feels so bad. She's basically, there's no one left to take care of Lilo, so she decides to drop out of college to take care of Lilo, right? What if that was the thing? What if that was the driving force of why Nani took care of Lilo, right? What if that was the main thing? That would have worked out well. That could have happened at any time in the movie, especially in the beginning of the movie. Or what if that was the main thing? Or even in the middle of the movie, like where Nani reveals to Lilo why she dropped out of being a marine biologist in college. She did that to, like, maybe the reason why she dropped out. Well, the reason why she dropped out is because she wanted to take care of Lilo, provide Lilo with good care, right? That's what should have happened. That's what it should have happened. But with Disney nowadays, it seems like Disney forgot what the original message in Lilo and Stitch was about. Like I said, Ohana means family. Ohana means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. That's the message in the original movie. This message is like, oh yeah, Ohana means family, but I'm gonna go to college. Like, really? Come on, Disney. The Walt Disney Company is one of the biggest film studios out there, and they couldn't remember the original film's message? They couldn't incorporate that in the live action remake? Like, it was written so badly. But nevertheless, I still enjoy the movie as it is. I mean, you can still have a good movie with a bad message as long as the movie's fun. But at the same time, I was kind of hoping for a good message. I mean, the message is still there, but it's basically a bad message. For me, it doesn't ruin the movie for me, but I still enjoy the movie as it is, despite its flaws. One last negative to mention, and this is basically the film's editing. The way how they edited this movie, it feels so choppy, right? As if the movie was basically like the movie is going so fast, right? And this is also and it's also the pacing in this movie too, and the pacing does fall into the editing. Like the way how it's edited, it's like if they brought Stitch on board to do editing and it goes by so fast. And my goodness, the way how it opens up with Stitch, like Stitch is still good, but the way how it opens up, most notably in the film's opening sequence in space, it goes by fast. The opening feels like 5 minutes. Like in the original opening for Lilo and Stitch, it feels like 10 or 15 minutes. It's like half of the opening is gone, right? It just goes by super fast. I mean, that's just an example. The same can be said with the rest of the movie too. Like some parts feel like it goes by real fast, right? It goes by real fast. Some of it can work, others not so much. But I'm just giving you an example for the movie's opening. But that's pretty much it. And also something to mention too. This one's more of a mixed bag for me. This is referring to the removal of Pleakley's drag disguise, and I'm gonna give you my reason why. This is just my reason. If you have your own interpretation about that, feel free to comment below and keep the comments positive on the reason behind it, please. The reason why I think the removal of Pleakley's drag disguise is mixed on my part, and the reason being because this movie is already playing around with the idea of Jumba and Pleakley disguising themselves as human beings. So I don't think it would make sense for Pleakley in human form to be, to disguise and to be wearing drag, okay? That's probably the reason why, in my opinion, even though, yes, the director even mentioned that they tried playing around with the idea, especially with Gantu. They probably did with Pleakley. But like I said, if you're playing around with the idea of Jumba and Pleakley being humans, it doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to have Pleakley in human form be dressed in drag. Now, if they were going to play around with the idea of that, they should have human Pleakley disguise himself as a human woman. To me, I think that would have worked. Okay, that would have worked. Not in a transgender way, that would have been bad, but in a way where it can be funny, right? That would have been funny. Like, okay, Pleakley in human form. If they want to play around with Pleakley being a woman, he should have disguised himself as an actual human woman. How Jumbo and Pleakley disguised themselves in trench coats at one point, found their human counterparts, and that's what they did to disguise themselves as actual humans. That's what Pleakley should have done when he's trying to find a disguise for his woman form, right? That's what it should have happened. Just to play around with the idea. That's just me playing around with the idea, and also, being funny, right? Because that's the whole point. Pleakley, while in alien form in the original, disguised himself as a woman. He grabbed like women items, just to disguise himself, play around with. That's basically, pretty sure that's a character trait in the original Lilo and Stitch, where Pleakley dresses himself as a woman. Plus, it was also funny too. And no, it was not pushing a message of drag. All right, it was not. The whole point of Pleakley dressing himself as a woman is him being funny. All right, is basically funny. It was trying to like pull off the comedy, right? That's the whole point of comedy. That's basically the whole point. That's basically the whole point of comedy, right? But yeah, I can understand why some people were upset about this, but to me, I didn't mind. Heck, there was even a couple of moments where Pleakley in human Billy Magnuson form was wearing I want to say a woman's sweater of some sort. It had a flower on it, plus one of those shower caps of some sort. Like, that's the only type of drag reference that they got in the live action movie. I'm just saying this as a critic and reviewer. I'm not trying to push anything drag related or transgender related anything. No, I'm not trying to push any of that. I'm just pointing out the whole criticism of why Pleakley's drag disguise was removed. That's all I'm just trying to say. But this is just from my point of view. My opinion, alright? And that's pretty much it. And a couple of things to mention. I thought David was okay in this movie, but David was just there, right? I mean, he was kind of there in the original as well, but he didn't really do much aside from, surfing the waves with Nani and Lilo, plus jump starting the truck to revive Stitch. Those were the only things that he was able to do in this movie, right? And the Grand Councilwoman, I thought the Grand Councilwoman was okay, but she was just there, right? It's like some of the supporting characters were just there, right? Especially Myrtle. Myrtle was just there, right? But I do find it funny how Lilo and Stitch both stole a toy car that one of Myrtle's friends was riding on, and one of Myrtle's friends was driving, and Stitch jump starts it just to drive in it, right? But I do find it funny how both Lilo and Stitch returned the broken car to Myrtle just to, make amends, right? I don't know, but but I thought that was okay. But anyway, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much my only negatives with that movie, while also mentioning the one mixed bag of Pleakley's drag disguise and some of the other stuff from this movie. So that's my positives and negatives. Now, let's go into the trivia for this movie, shall we? Now, I've already mentioned some of this during my background, but of course, Tia Carrere was the original voice actress for Nani Pelikai, who is now the social worker Miss Kikoa. And then, of course, Chris Sanders returns to voice Stitch. But here's something that is new. He had to go back and forth between making his blockbuster hit, The Wild Robot, which came out in 2024, while also doing voice work for Stitch, right? So that's interesting, right? And that was going on at the same time. And I gotta give Chris Sanders some points right there, because it is hard to go back and forth between working on a new film and then, of course, doing a live-action remake of the same film while providing his voice, right? And then, also, I mentioned Ving Rhames. So, Ving Rhames, who played Cobra Bubbles in the original, he was actually offered a cameo role in this movie, but he declined due to scheduling conflicts with Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, which ended up being released on the same day as Lilo and Stitch. which again, I don't know why Hollywood wanted to have both of these movies come out the same time, but I don't know. Maybe they want to do another Barbenheimer phenomenon, right? And also, this is something that I didn't know, but one of them I've already known, but the other one not so much. This film is dedicated to David Ogden Stiers and Zoe Caldwell, the original voice actors for Dr. Jumba Jukiba and the Grand Councilwoman in the original animated franchise. So David Ogden Stiers, I kind of knew that he passed away, but I didn't know about Zoe Caldwell, to be honest. So rest in peace to both David Ogden Stiers and Zoe Caldwell. Now the next thing is that this movie was meant to be released straight to streaming on Disney Plus, but unfortunately due to strong reviews from test screenings, Disney prompted to instead give it a wide theatrical release. And you know what? I think that was a good idea that this movie got a theatrical release, because I don't know how I feel about a live action remake going straight to Disney Plus. And yes, they have already done that a couple times with Lady and the Tramp and the live action remake of Pinocchio. They've already done that. And of course, the Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie, which that movie alone should have gotten a theatrical release. That movie, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie, should have been released in theaters. That movie would have made $1 billion instantly. But for Lilo and Stitch, I'm actually glad it got a theatrical. I'm actually glad it got a theatrical release. Now, of course, going back to Chris Sanders, due to his busy schedule working on The Wild Robot, Chris Sanders recorded his lines for Stitch at the DreamWorks Animation Campus recording studio in Glendale, and is basically the first to use it for an outside project. And like I said, gotta give Chris Sanders props for going back and forth between Wild Robot and the live action remake of Lilo and Stitch. And of course, Chris Sanders is the only original actor to reprise his role as Stitch, while the other characters in this film are played and voiced by new actors. Now, of course, Pleakley briefly mentions his full name as Wendell Pleakley at one point. His first name was revealed as Wendy, a diminutive of Wendell, as he is known in Lilo and Stitch, the series. And here's another thing. Director Dean Fleischer Camp revealed in an issue of Cinema Blend's sister magazine Special Effects that he made sure Maya Kealoha had an actual Stitch to work alongside, and they developed a real bond during filming. I was pretty passionate that Maya would need something to act opposite. When you're spending money on a movie, everyone goes, "Oh, could she just act with a tennis ball if we're going to be replacing Stitch entirely?" This was the movie's heart, and she needed a proper scene partner. So we were thinking, get him out of the truck and get him on the rig. And she kissed him goodnight. It was very sweet. And now that's something that I liked. I liked how there is an actual something. I actually like there's an actual design for Stitch, right? You need to have something on standby rather than, just have an actual, rather than looking at nothing, right? Because if you're looking at nothing, right? If you're looking at nothing, then what's the whole point, right? Because something's got to be there. And while the CGI for Stitch is good, I'm actually glad there's an actual Stitch design for Lilo, for the actress for Lilo to look at, right? I think that's a similar route that they did with the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. And while I'm also at it, this movie gave me Sonic the Hedgehog movie vibes. And to give you a couple examples, one example is basically Lilo and Stitch meeting for the first time. They both screamed. That is basically referencing when Tom Wachowski finds Sonic the Hedgehog in the garage, and they both screamed until Tom shot him with a tranquilizer dart. So that's the first part. The second one is basically riding in a vehicle, which is basically Tom and Sonic in the car together. And then of course you got Nani, Lilo, and Stitch in the car, in the truck. So that's another one. And then of course getting a DNA sample, which is basically I guess you could call it a DNA sample, which is basically Dr. Robotnik finding a quill from Sonic the Hedgehog, which the same can be said with the same can be said with Cobra Bubbles finding, grabbing a part of Stitch's fur, right? Although he physically grabbed it, but it still checks out of basically grabbing DNA samples from both creatures, right? So that's the third thing. And then the fourth thing is basically, discovering the incident that happened, right? Which is basically Dr. Robotnik discovering, the power outage that happened at the baseball field, while Cobra Bubbles and the team discovered the alien ship that had landed. So those are the four things that basically reference Sonic the Hedgehog movie, right? So also the movie is rated PG, which basically Lilo and Stitch. Also, the live action movie is PG. The same can be said with the original Lilo and Stitch movie, which came out in 2002, which also has a PG rating. So Lilo and Stitch is the first live action reboot for a Disney animated feature film to have the same MPAA rating as the original 2D animated film. And here's something that is interesting. Courtney B. Vance, who played Cobra Bubbles in this movie, he revealed that his family made him take the role because his twin children were scared of Stitch and the animated aliens, so they never watched the original film or any of the sequels. Vance said that he took the role of Cobra Bubbles so he would allow his children to face their fears. And the night before filming was supposed to begin, a trailer containing $200,000 worth of costumes for the first 3 weeks of filming were destroyed by fire. The Honolulu Police Department is investigating it as a first-degree arson, and Hawaii has an unfortunate history of arson targeting the local film industry. And then another thing to mention is that while telling Stitch about Nani's past as a surfing champion, Lilo mentions that Nani's room used to have a bunch of trophies. The original movie has a scene that takes place in Nani's room in which dedicated viewers have spotted surfing trophies, which indicates that Nani was a surfing champion. Which also explains why Nani became a surfing coach in the middle of the movie. And then I've already mentioned about Dean Fleischer Camp saying "I tried." Well, Pleakley dressed as a woman to blend in with humans like the original almost made it in. In a TikTok video responding to fan comments on the trailer, Fleischer addressed the burning question, "Where is Pleakley's dress?" His answer was simple and revealing, "I tried." He says before showing off the never-before-seen concept art of Pleakley in a vibrant floral dress. The art clearly shows the team at one point planned to bring the moment to life, but it was ultimately cut from the final version. And this is kind of going off of what I said. They could have had Pleakley disguise himself in a human form, and this is kind of going off what I said. Pleakley should have disguised himself as a female in human form, just to play around with the idea of both Jumbo and Pleakley disguising themselves as human beings. And here's another fun fact. Sydney Agudong and Tia Karari are both American Filipino. So that's interesting right there. And also, going to the trailer, the first trailer received 158 million online views within the first 24 hours. So basically, that means there's a huge fan base, because Lilo and Stitch has a huge fan base, most notably with the character of Stitch, right? So Disney knew right away. They hit the online views for that, right? And here's something that is ironic. The film was filmed under the working title Bad Dog, referencing how the mischievous Stitch gets adopted as a dog. More amusingly, to add to this, the production company established just for this film was named Blue Koala Productions, after the blue alien's resemblance to the marsupial. And here's a little something right here. When Stitch is holding the soda gun, some of Stitch's lines are taken straight from the scene in Lilo and Stitch 2. Stitch has a glitch when he describes his nightmare to Lilo in that film, with a bit of clipping to shorten it. And I think there's also another scene too, where at least one or two times, some archive audio recordings of the original Stitch from the TV show and the sequels that followed had some archive audio recordings for to put in for Stitch. I think that was just for some scenes. In fact, not all of Chris Sanders' voice lines are in the film. At least one scene contains recordings from Lilo and Stitch 2, and it's important to note that Sanders, who is a busy filmmaker, was working on another project, which is basically The Wild Robot, from a different company during the production of this movie, which limited his availability for recording. And for this film, he completed 5 recording sessions, each lasting about 4 hours. And of course, Zach Galifianakis admitted that he didn't give much thought to join the cast of the Disney live-action remake. He humorously reflected on his reaction to the director's initial invitation by asking, "What are the hours?" At the time, he was unaware of the original film's existence. He accepted the role of Jumbo Jukiba, Stitch's evil genius creator, without knowing anything about the character. Initially, he noted that director Camp wanted him to play Pleakley, Jumba's sidekick. However, 2 days later, the director approached him again, asking if he would portray Jumba instead. Galifianakis responded without hesitation, saying, "Dean, I don't care. Whatever you need me to do, what will I do to get into one of these characters more deeply? It doesn't matter," he chuckled. And the rest was history. And of course, Lilo and Stitch is the 4th live-action remake to feature an actor from the original animated film reprising a role. One of them featured Jim Cummings as Winnie the Pooh and Tigger. One of them featured one of them is basically Christopher Robin's, where Jim Cummings played Winnie the Pooh and Tigger in Christopher Robin. And then of course you got Frank Welker, who played Abu in the Cave of Wonders in the Aladdin movie, to which he reprised that role in the 2019 Aladdin movie. And then of course James Earl Jones as Mufasa for both Lion King movies, the original and live action remake. And then here's another thing, I forgot about the Ice Cream Man. So the Ice Cream Man made a couple of cameos in this live action remake, and director Dean Fleischer Camp expressed his excitement about bringing the Ice Cream Man to life, noting that he felt particularly imitated by the Grand Councilwoman due to her significant role in the film's opening sequence. He shared, "I was really stoked about the Ice Cream Guy. I loved bringing all the characters to life, but the Grand Councilwoman's character design is especially beautiful in the original. Figuring out how to adapt her for live action was a fun challenge. She is one of the few characters who transitioned from our fully animated opening in space to live action scenes later on, which adds to the complexity. Nevertheless, I love how intimidating she is." So yeah, but I do glad the Ice Cream Man came back, although he had a snow cone, and we only see that for a couple scenes. Most notably when Pleakley accidentally went into his actual alien form, and he freaked out, leading to the point where the Ice Cream Man dropped his it wasn't an ice cream, it was a snow cone. So, but it still checks out though. Here's another thing I didn't know. David's necklace has Maui's hook on it, as seen in Disney's Moana. That's actually interesting right there. Also, the car that Stitch and Lilo took is a Power Wheels drivable toy car. Modeled after the second generation Range Rover Evoque, introduced in 2018. Instead of reading Nani's diary, Lilo discovers her crush on David by reading her text messages. Okay, Lilo, spying on your big sister's secrets, huh? And also to mention this too, going back to Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning, Hannah Waddingham, who played the Grand Councilwoman in the live-action Lilo and Stitch movie, is also in the Mission Impossible movie. She plays one of the officers on the how do I say this? I like to call it the Top Gun cruise because there is a scene. Spoiler alert: there is a scene in Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning where Ethan Hunt goes on this Top Gun ship and talks to the officer, to which Hannah Waddingham plays. And of course, that's basically almost feels like a reference to Top Gun, right? But I just wanted to bring this up because Hannah Waddingham is both in Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning and Lilo and Stitch. So also to mention this too, I remember in the original Lilo and Stitch movie where the trailer for the trailer the trail for the original Lilo and Stitch movies, they had teaser trailers, but this time at that time what they did was they had Stitch crash into different different movie trailers based on like the different Disney movies that came out in the 90s. Like for example, Stitch was riding his spaceship next to Aladdin and Jasmine while they're riding on that magic carpet. There was also another time where Stitch wiped out Ariel while surfing. And then there was another one where Stitch was hanging on the chandelier in Beauty and the Beast, and the chandelier landing right in between Beast and Belle, right? Those are some examples right there. There's also another example where Rafiki was, instead of introducing Simba, he introduced Stitch. And and Rafiki was like, Simba? Actually, they did something similar for that Lion King one because there was one trailer I saw, and that was when I went to see the Mufasa movie. They did a Lilo and Stitch teaser where instead it was Simba, it was Stitch being introduced as like the new king, right? Long live the king, I guess. And I think they did more advertisements for that as well. Like they did one where there's like they did a couple movie posters where Stitch is wearing Cinderella's glass slipper. There was even a moment where Stitch is trying to eat both the magic lamp for Aladdin and and the poison apple from Snow White. I thought that was pretty funny, but that's pretty much that's pretty much it. And also one last thing, at the end of the movie, and I caught this immediately, Nani can be seen wearing a Prince Purple Rain t-shirt at the end of the movie. And then a couple more things to mention. Cobra Bubbles is shown watching a movie on Cobra Bubbles is shown watching a movie on the Pelicai's TV, just like in the original film's end credits. And then Jumba briefly considers bringing a few modifications to Stitch, going through an interface depicting experiments 621 through 625 and 627 from Lilo and Stitch, the series. And of course, the restaurant that Nani and David worked at, it is actually called Jimmy's Lao instead of, the tourist Lao. So it has a proper name this time around. And also, in the reveal, Stitch says his infamous tagline phrase, Mi ganala Krista! In devious excitement at the D23 version of the reveal, he gets admonished by an off-screen woman who tells him Stitch language. And you know what? That says it all. Now, Stitch doesn't wear his Elvis outfit until the end of the movie, which that actually happened. And then, of course, I mentioned the other experiments. I mentioned the experiment numbers, but of course, Jumba briefly passes Reuben, Angel, and Evil from the series and sequels. And then, of course, during the fight scene with Jumba, Lilo grabs a frying pan as a weapon, and it turns out the frying pan is the exact kind that Rapunzel uses as her weapon in Tangled. And then, of course, as I mentioned about Gantu, Gantu is not in this movie, but director Dean Fleischer Camp commented on the decision, saying, Gantu was one of those elements that didn't translate well to live action. We explored the character a bit, but ultimately we had to make a choice. I stand by that decision because I believe that in trying to ground these characters and tell a story with more emotional depth, especially regarding the relationship between the sisters, we needed to free up some space to allow for that development, which is something I didn't appreciate, but whatever. I mean, I hope Gantu, but if there's a sequel coming out, I hope Gantu is in that. But only time will tell, so we'll have to wait and see. But other than that, that's pretty much it for the trivia. So there you have it, folks. That is my take on the live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch. Like I said, I had a lot of fun with this movie despite the film's flaws. But if I were to rank this movie, I give it a 7 out of 10. The movie is a lot of fun. The cast did a very good job. I love the on-location sets. But despite the changes, like the ending, the exclusion of Captain Gantu, and among many other things, including the editing, that's the reason why I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. But other than that, that's pretty much it. And if I'm missing out on anything from this movie, please let me know in the comments below. But other than that, that's a wrap on this episode. So, what did you guys think of the live action Lilo and Stitch movie? Did you like this movie? Did you not like this movie? Did you think this movie is okay? Was this one of the more better live action remakes coming out of Disney? I would love to hear your thoughts. Anyway, that is a wrap on this episode. Thank you all for tuning into Codo Cinema. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. Remember to watch movies and stay positive.